Hey, this is Aaron,
And this is Kristin.
and this is the Drive Mode Show.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about something big and green and dragon-like, right?
Yeah. We're going to talk about the Nissan GT-R, also known as Godzilla.
That's fun. And you just had it a couple weeks ago, right?
I had it last week. It's a phenomenal car. It's always been one of my favorites. The first time I ever drove it, I drove it on a racetrack, which is probably the best way to be introduced to that car. No matter who you are or what your skill level, you become a champ when you sit in that car and take it around a track, because it is really, really difficult to screw it up.
It's blisteringly fast with a top speed of 220 miles an hour. Not that we'd ever get it to that speed without a pro driver sitting behind the wheel.
It's amazing. Some people have been getting, especially in the 2021 model and the 2020 before, they've been getting sub 3 second 0 to 60s. That's usually with a rolling start. So that would be like a drag strip start. I was the best I was able to do, and I do it flat footed. That means I'm not moving the car. The car is sitting and then I take off. The best that I was able to do was 3.5. That was a fluke because I was a lot closer to 4 seconds on my averages in that car. But that's, I mean, for somebody like me, that's a complete non-pro at that stuff. That's amazing. That is uber awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun to drive. You know, people say, well, it hasn't been changed in so long and it's boring. No, it is not boring.
No, and it turns heads. The one thing about that car is you could be a Mopar person, you could be a Chevy only person, you could be, Corvettes are the thing, you could be I only love BMW or whatever, you could be an M Pro, whatever it is. Whatever you love, whatever your sports car is, it doesn't matter. You deeply respect the GTR. Everywhere I went, I would have people pull up next to me and they would rev their V8s and make a lot of noise, and they would want to race and stuff. But everybody that I talked to that was in any vehicle at all, any sort of performance vehicle, they all had a great amount of respect for the GTR, because it may be old and outdated by some people's standard, because at this point we're looking at 10 years just since the last body update, since the last, front fascia and stuff changed. It may be old and outdated to some people, but it is still a phenomenal powerhouse. It's putting out numbers in terms of its speed and quickness and everything that rival even electric cars that have the best of the best. So it's just a wonderful machine. 565 horsepower built in right off the bat. Handmade engine, has the person's name on a little plate on the front of it. One guy made that engine, a master builder. And if you go to the Nismo model, you go to 600 horsepower. Wonderful turbos that kick in really quickly, lots of power band for a long ways, full-time all-wheel drive, which is why it takes off so fast. 6-speed automatic transmission, which you can control through the pedal shifters. It is a dual clutch, so it shifts. There's no waiting, and the car is not afraid to downshift. It will downshift as soon as you push the pedal down if you need it.
Yeah, it shifts really fast. I had that question, people were asking me, well, it's an automatic. That's kind of lame. And I'm like, no, it's really fast. It shifts.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because that's the number one question you probably get is there a manual transmission option? And the answer is no. But that's also true of the Hellcat. That's true of a whole lot of vehicles for two reasons. The big one being the manufacturer can't warranty a manual clutch in a performance car. And chances are you're going to destroy the clutch in your performance car. I don't care how good you think you are probably going to destroy it eventually, because we're humans, we make errors. The second reason is simplicity. Costs a lot of money to have two different transmissions in a car that only sells 300-400 copies a month, or 1,200 a year, whatever the number is. So by simplifying, you keep those costs lower. Now, in the GT-R, I mean, your base price is $115,000, and you can go up over 200 fairly easily.
It's definitely pricey. And we were talking about numbers and performance numbers, and it has a ton of really cool gauges and measurements that you can see right there. And I love that you can do all. It's almost gamifying your performance.
Yeah, and it's an interesting number of metrics because it gives you the usual stuff you expect, the G forces and you can look at your RPM power band and other stuff, but it's on such a simplified, tiny, weird little screen that they can't show you the kind of charts and graphs that you'll see in a car like a Hellcat or the Chevy Performance app. So like if you're in the Corvette or something, where you can chart and graph to your heart's content. You can put it all on a USB. You can go nuts. You can record from the cameras, all that kind of stuff. The GT-R is more old school. It's older in build, and it's also, the infotainment is very outdated. The driver information screen and stuff, it's not even in color. So there's not a whole lot there, but the focus in the car is more on the windshield. So you get those performance metrics if you want them, but you're going to need an outside app to really, like, if you really want to dive deep and chart and graph everything. But it will give it. It doesn't need to give you that info because you just feel it. Just in that car, no matter what you're doing, you're going fast.
Yeah, it takes off very, very, very quickly. And I kind of felt like it was kind of like being in the Aston Martin Vantage, right? That it's all about the drive experience, because the Vantage is using the entertainment system from the previous generation Mercedes. So it's not up to date, but you forgive because it's so good to drive. And with Nissan, with the GT-R, they've got the Bose audio system, which is okay. I'm not a huge fan of the Bose systems. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. But
I thought it was adequate for the car. So when you're in the car and you're on the highway and you're just cruising, so you don't want to, you're not necessarily wanting to listen to the powertrain or anything else. The stereo is good enough. It's still a sports car, so it's still loud. There's a lot of noise coming in. There's a lot of feedback coming in. You will bounce on every pebble. So every single pebble will cause the suspension to move. It's a sports car. And in talking of that, speaking of that, the seating is also very, very sports car seating. So you're not going to have 300 miles of comfort sitting in that seat. It is relatively adjustable, but it's not at say, Infiniti or Buick, or it's not at luxury car adjustable, and it's a very jouncy car. So even when you put the dampers into comfort mode, it is still on everything, because in the end, it is doing everything possible to keep those tires shoved to the pavement. Because that is that car.
I mean, you're a lot taller and broader than I am. So how did you feel about the comfort of the seats? I thought they were pretty comfortable for me, but I think they'd be even better if they put the Nissan zero gravity seats in there, or some zero gravity elements in the sport seats.
I think that would create too much complacency. it's a car that you can't snooze in. Um, you have to be paying attention all the time. And the seating was actually okay. The bolsters are low enough that they weren't hitting me on the bottom of my shoulder blades.
Okay.
They were just hugging my rib cage, which is probably what they should be doing. My issue was actually just headroom. Um, I could find headroom, but to do that, I had to put the seat as far down as it would go, which meant that I had nothing between me and the floor. But again, sports car, those are the sacrifices you make. You know, my all of my favorite cars. So, you know, the little cars that I like, I love the STI. I love, you know, those are all the same way. You're going to have to drink a lot of water or lose a kidney. So you, because you're just going to the whole time. But the it was interesting because the maximum horsepower in the car comes at relatively high RPM. It redlines somewhere around 7,000, and the maximum horsepower is supposed to come at pretty close to 6,000. But you're getting it way faster, and that's because the torque comes at about half that. So you get your maximum torque really quick by comparison, especially considering that the transmission will do everything it can to run that RPM up as high as it can. And you've got more trunk space than you would expect. The back seats are useless. You
Agreed. Yeah, the back,
unless,
you know.
yeah, unless you know somebody that's chopped off at the knees, that they can fit back there, and probably your dog. You won't get a car seat in there, so you'll get no child safety seats in there. You will not get anybody of any size. I mean, so here's the deal: if you were driving the car, we could probably fit like Jill Simonillo in the back seat behind you.
Maybe, but she'd be even.
You're looking at like an average size and a very small size person, you know.
You're right about the trunk, though. I mean, I took the GT-R when I had it from Austin to San Angelo, about a 3.5 hour drive, and it was pretty comfortable. I mean, it was comfortable enough to drive for that distance, and I was able to fit my carry-on, my son's carry-on, and a couple other things in the trunk. So I was surprised by how deep it was.
We got a week's worth of groceries in there, which, you know, so as long as you're not buying like the Costco size toilet paper or something, it'll fit in there.
Right in the back.
When you did your long drive, did you see anywhere near the 22 miles a gallon it's rated for on the highway?
No.
I don't know if it's possible to get those numbers.
No, but I'm it out. I mean, I was really revving it just because it's fun.
That's what I mean. It's not possible for anyone to have the self-control to end up with those numbers. Every on-ramp is a chance to go 100 miles an hour. Every, you know, yeah, I can't imagine anybody who has the kind of discipline required to get 22 miles a gallon out of that car. Especially when you can do we can get to 100 miles an hour in about 7 seconds in that thing.
Yeah. I think it's really fun. I think that, yes, I'd like to see some to it, especially with the audio system. But other than that, I think it's still viable as a supercar.
It still sells. It sells in the kind of numbers probably that Nissan is comfortable with. You know, like I said, every single engine is handmade. There's only a handful of people that build those. And every single Nissan GT-R is an import. They don't make them here. They make them in Japan. And they have master craftsmen doing almost all of it. So all the assembly, the engine builds, all that stuff. Those are people that years, decades of experience doing this stuff. So it is built to the highest standard Nissan has, and it's got to be because of what it's going to be put through.
So, I mean, they have to be able to justify the price, and it is pricey. I mean, it's up there around the same price as the Lexus LC500, which is one of my very favorite coupes. You know, so if you had to choose between those two, What would you say?
I would go with the GT-R. I know the LC 500 is a beautiful car, and it's a lovely luxury vehicle. It just, it fits that in every single way, but it's not a GT-R.
Legendary. I mean, it really is something special, and it does turn heads, and it's relatively rare to see them. So people are like,
right.
Yeah.
And to see the kind of power that they're pulling out of a what is it, 232 cubic inch engine. It's just crazy that they're pulling that much. It's a dual overhead 24 valve 6-cylinder, and the amount that they're getting out of that is just crazy nuts. And plus, the GT-R is Godzilla. It's got a song named after it. Go Godzilla.
Yeah, drive it again. I would like to have it for a whole nother week and just have some fun with it.
Yeah, I want to take it out onto the track now. Now that I'm a little more familiar, and also just because I haven't done that in a long time.
I'm gonna drift the GT-R. That would be fun.
Oh yeah. It would also take a fair amount of skill, full-time all-wheel drive, and power for days. And everything about the car is tuned towards grip. So getting it to drift would require a fair amount of work, a little bit of skill. I was able to do it slightly, and that was only because we got a whole lot of rain. So the pavement was wet. And it was, it probably wasn't even any more than 10 feet, because it was just like around the corner a little bit.
Like I did it.
Yeah. So that's what we got. The Nissan GT-R. Such a great car. This has been Aaron.
And this is Kristin.
This is the Drive Mode Show. Subscribe.